Okay, so when we talk about a company being green, what does that really mean? Beyond just the nice marketing slogans. How can you actually tell if an organization is genuinely embedding environmental thinking right into how it operates? Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a standard that gives a pretty solid framework for that, ISO 1001.2015. And we're using this guide you share, really pulling out the key pieces. The idea isn't a line-by-line slog, no. It's about getting you quickly up to speed on what the standard is, but maybe more importantly, why it matters for any organization trying to, genuinely improve its environmental game. Think of it as helping you see the substance behind the claims.
That's a great way to put it. At its heart, ISO 11301.2015 lays out the requirements for what's called an environmental management system, or EMS. And like you said, it's not just ticking boxes, it's a systematic way for organizations to manage their environmental responsibilities. The whole point is to enhance environmental performance and contribute to sustainability. And it's designed to work for any organization. Size, sector, type doesn't matter. It's universally applicable.
Okay, so it's a system, it's flexible. What else defines it?
Well, a really important point is that it uses something called the Annex SL structure. Think of it like a high-level template. All the modern ISO standards like 9001 for quality or 45001 for health and safety, they all use the same structure now.
Ah, so if a company knows one, it helps with others.
Exactly. It makes integration much smoother because the basic framework, the clause structure, it's familiar. And running through this whole structure are two sort of core ideas. Risk-based thinking and continual improvement. Those pop up everywhere.
Okay, risk-based thinking and continual improvement. Got it. So let's unpack the standard itself. How does it flow? Where does an organization actually, start?
Right. So the standard kind of guides you through the process logically. You start with the basics, the scene-setting clauses. You've got the introduction, clause 0, which basically says, hey, this is about managing environmental responsibility systematically, think about risks, aim to improve, standard intro stuff. Then clause 1, the scope, just confirms again, yes, this is for any organization wanting an EMS. And clause 3 is terms and definitions. This is actually pretty important.
Making sure everyone speaks the same language.
Precisely. Like, what do we mean by environment or an environmental aspect? That's any element of an organization's activities, products, or services that interacts or can interact with the environment.
Like using energy or creating waste.
Exactly. And the environmental impact is the change that results from that aspect. So energy use might lead to carbon emissions. That's the impact. Right. Getting these terms straight is foundational.
Okay, clear definitions are set. Then the standard gets into the actual requirements, right? How does an organization start building its EMS?
Yeah, now we get into the core requirements, starting with clause 4. Context of the organization. This is fundamental. It's where you do your homework, basically. You have to understand your internal and external issues.
Right.
Meaning what's going on inside and outside the company that could affect your environmental goals or be affected by your environmental performance. Think climate change risks, resource scarcity, local planning laws, that kind of thing.
Okay, so understanding the landscape.
Yes, and also understanding the needs and expectations of what the standard calls interested parties.
Stakeholders, essentially.
Exactly. Your regulators, your customers, the local community, employees, suppliers. Who cares about your environmental performance and what do they expect? You need to identify them.
Right.
Then, based on all that, you determine the scope of your EMS. You define the boundaries. What parts of the organization are covered? What activities? It needs to be clearly defined.
So you know exactly what you're managing.
Right. And clause 4.4 then just wraps it up by saying, okay, based on all this context and scope, you need to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve your EMS according to the standard's requirements. It sets the stage for everything else.
Okay, that makes sense. Context first.
Mm-hmm.
But, a plan is only as good as the commitment behind it. Yeah. Where does leadership come in? This feels like it could really get interesting here.
Absolutely crucial. And the standard puts it right up front in clause 5, leadership. This isn't optional. Clause 5.1 stresses that top management must demonstrate leadership and commitment. They can't just delegate it and forget it.
What does that look like in practice?
It means things like ensuring the environmental policy and objectives align with the company's strategic direction, making sure resources are available, integrating the EMS into business processes, and promoting continual improvement. They have to be visibly involved.
So leading by example.
Definitely. And a key part of that is Clause 5.2, the environmental policy. This needs to be a documented commitment from the top. It has to include commitments to protect the environment, fulfill compliance obligations, laws and regulations, and continually improve the EMS itself. It's the guiding statement.
And it needs to be communicated, I assume?
Oh, absolutely, within the organization and often available to interested parties too. Then, Clause 5.3 deals with organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Basically, who is responsible for what regarding the EMS. It needs to be clearly defined, assigned, and communicated. No confusion about who owns which part.
Okay, so strong leadership, a clear policy, defined roles. That feels like a solid foundation. What's next? Moving towards the actual plan.
Exactly. Once leadership is on board, you move into Clause 6, planning. This is where you get strategic about managing your environmental footprint. Clause 6.1 is key. It's about planning actions to address risks and opportunities.
Ah, risk-based thinking again.
Yes. You have to systematically identify your environmental aspects, those interactions we mentioned earlier. Then you figure out which ones are significant, meaning they have or could have a major impact. You also need to identify your compliance obligations, the laws, regulations, permits, any other requirements the company subscribes to. And then you assess the risks and opportunities associated with your aspects, your compliance obligations, and even those broader contextual issues from Clause 4.
So it's not just about avoiding bad things, but maybe finding better ways too, opportunities.
Precisely. Maybe reducing resource use saves money. Maybe developing a greener product opens a new market. It forces a proactive, strategic view. Then, based on that understanding, Clause 6.2 says you need to establish environmental objectives. And these need to be measurable, monitored, communicated, updated, smart goals, essentially. And you plan how you'll achieve them, what actions, who's responsible, by when, how you'll measure success.
Okay, so that's the strategic plan mapped out.
Yeah.
Now you need the stuff to make it happen, right? People, tools, information.
You got it. That takes us to Clause 7, support. This is all about providing the necessary underpinnings for the EMS to function. Clause 7.1 is simply about resources. The organization needs to determine and provide the resources needed. Could be people, skills, technology, financial resources, infrastructure, whatever it takes to run the EMS effectively.
Makes sense. What else falls under support?
Competence, that's 7.2. Ensuring that people whose work can affect environmental performance are competent. That might be through education, training, or experience.
So people need to know how to do their jobs in an environmentally sound way.
Right. And closely linked is 7.3, awareness. People need to understand the environmental policy, their contribution to the EMS, the benefits of better performance, and crucially, the implications of not conforming. Why does this matter to them and their work?
Okay, competence and awareness. Communication must be in here too.
Yep, Clause 7.4, communication. This covers both internal and external communication relevant to the EMS. What gets communicated, when, to whom, how. Clear processes are needed.
Internal updates, maybe reporting to regulators externally.
Exactly. And finally, 7.5 is documented information. This is vital. You need to control the documents and records required by the standard and needed for the EMS to work. Think procedures, policies, monitoring results, audit reports.
Got it. Version control, accessibility, keeping records, the backbone of any manageable system.
Absolutely. It needs to be auditable.
Okay, so the plan is set, leadership is committed, resources and support are in place. Now it's time to actually do things. Put the plan into action on the ground.
Precisely. Welcome to Clause 8, operation. This is where the planning meets the day-to-day reality. Clause 8.1 is operational planning and control. This means implementing controls for processes related to your significant environmental aspects. Basically, putting procedures or work instructions in place to ensure activities are carried out in a way that minimizes environmental impact, consistent with your policy and objectives.
So like procedures for handling waste or controlling emissions from a specific process.
Exactly. Documented procedures were needed to ensure consistency. It also covers things like managing changes and outsourcing processes, making sure environmental control is maintained. Then, a really critical part is Clause 8.2, emergency preparedness and response.
Planning for when things go wrong.
Yes. You need to identify potential emergency situations, spills, fires, leaks, and plan how you'll respond to prevent or mitigate the environmental impacts. And crucially, you need to periodically test these plans and learn from drills or actual incidents.
Being prepared, not just hoping emergencies won't happen.
Okay.
So the system is up and running, people are following procedures.
Yeah.
How do you know if it's actually working, if you're achieving those objectives?
Great question. That leads directly into Clause 9. Performance evaluation. You've done the work. Now you need to check how effective it's been. Clause 9.1 covers monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. What needs to be monitored, how, when, how will results be analyzed. This is about tracking your performance against objectives and legal requirements.
Turning raw data into actual insights. Avoiding the trap of just collecting numbers.
Exactly. You need to evaluate the data. Are we meeting our water reduction targets? Are we compliant with emission limits? Then, 9.2 mandates internal audits. These are planned checks at regular intervals to see if the EMS conforms to the organization's own requirements and the ISO 14001 standard, and if it's effectively implemented and maintained.
Like an internal health check for the system.
A very good analogy. Conducted objectively. And finally, 9.3 is the management review. This is where top management gets formally involved again. They review the EMS performance data, audit results, compliance status, achievement of objectives, feedback from interested parties, risks, and opportunities.
Closing the loop with leadership.
Yes, and the output of this review must include decisions related to continual improvement opportunities and any needed changes to the EMS.
Which brings us neatly to the last part, that commitment to always getting better.
You got it. Clause 10, improvement. This isn't just about fixing problems, it's about proactively seeking ways to enhance environmental performance. Clause 10.1 is a general requirement to determine and select opportunities for improvement and implement necessary actions. Clause 10.2 deals specifically with nonconformity and corrective action. If something goes wrong, an objective isn't met, a procedure isn't followed, a spill occurs, you need a process to react, evaluate the cause, implement actions to correct it, and prevent it from happening again.
Learning from mistakes, basically.
Essentially, yes, and ensuring the corrective actions are effective. And then Clause 10.3 brings it all together with continual improvement. The organization has to continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the EMS to enhance environmental performance overall.
So it really is a cycle. Plan, do, check, act, but with improvement baked in.
Exactly. That Plan-Do-Check-Act cycle, often called PDCA, really underpins the whole standard structure. And to quickly recap those key threads, the EMS must be risk-based, it must be properly documented, things like procedures for significant aspects, those environmental aspect registers, a way to track legal compliance, your objectives and plans, emergency plans, and it absolutely must be auditable. That's how you ensure it's real.
That's a fantastic breakdown. So stepping back, what does this all mean for you, our listener? Why wade through all this detail about ISO 14001? Well, hopefully you can see now how much depth there is behind a genuine commitment to environmental responsibility. It's not just a statement, it's a whole system. Understanding this helps you cut through the noise, maybe ask sharper questions when a company talks about being green. You get a sense of the structure, the rigor involved. It's actually a powerful framework for tackling complex problems. So we've traced the journey. Understanding your context, getting leadership on board, planning strategically, putting support and operations in place, checking performance, and driving improvement. It's quite a comprehensive framework.
It really is. And, thinking about how effective this structured, risk-based, cyclical approach is for environmental performance, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Where else could applying these core principles, really understanding your context, ensuring leadership buy-in, thorough planning, robust support and operations, honest performance evaluation, and that drive for continual improvement, where else could that lead to really significant enhancements? Maybe in other parts of a business, or even, in how we approach personal goals.
That's a really interesting thought to leave people with, applying that systematic thinking more broadly.
Yeah.
Definitely something to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ISO 14001.